on WVLT in Vineland, and tonight I'm sitting down with Carolyn Rush, who is running for General Assembly in LD1. But before we start our conversation with her, I want to remind everybody that the normal format here is I go through an introductory report to help set the tone of the conversation. Then afterwards, we're going to get into a couple of topics with me and Carolyn. And then, if time allows, we'll open up the phone lines so that people can call in and interact. So let's dive into this introductory report. When I first started this platform nearly 2 years ago, it wasn't because I had some elaborate plan to become a civic advocate or to host candidate interviews. It was much simpler. I opened my sample ballot before an election and realized I had no idea who most of the people were. I thought I'd spend a few afternoons digging in, maybe several hours, to get a clear understanding of who was on the ballot and what they stood for. But that wasn't realistic, because very quickly I learned that you couldn't get comprehensive, reliable information efficiently if you were willing to put in the time. Many candidates don't make it easy to find clear, detailed summaries of their positions in one place. What started as a simple attempt to reasonably educate myself turned into 6 weeks of outreach just to track down basic details, like candidate websites, agendas, and well-known positions on issues. My first breakthrough wasn't an interview, it was a conversation with Vineland Mayor Anthony Fanucci, who pointed me in the right direction and helped connect me with a few other people. That was enough to get the process started. From there, I began showing up to local events and meetings. Sometimes I was welcomed, other times I ran into surprising amounts of opposition simply for trying to ask questions and gather information. And now, almost 2 years later, here we are, sitting down again with a candidate I learned about mostly by chance. I only discovered Carolyn Rush's campaign when an old friend shared a flyer for gubernatorial candidate Steven Solof's meet and greet on Facebook, whom Carolyn was running with as part of a team. I showed up, introduced myself, and we ended up recording a podcast where I was able to ask her about her background, her platform, and her views. Those conversations were very valuable, but I also believe, especially in 2025, that much of that information could have already been laid out on an official campaign website before voters ever had to go hunting. That's part of why this project exists, so that when information is scattered or absent, we have a space to ask candidates to clarify their positions directly. After our first interview, I continued researching. I reviewed what her opponent, Assemblyman Antoine McClellan, said when he came on this show a few weeks ago. And I also took a closer look at Carolyn's public posts, especially one that caught my attention. With another one of her posts, it was easy to look at a meme about socialism, laugh at the joke it showed, and dismiss it as just a topic for casual conversation on social media. But this other post was different. It shared a long article that not only called out what it described as inappropriate behavior by some Democrats, but was ultimately a rallying cry to stand behind Zohran Mamdani and his platform. Mamdani often speaks in a way that appeals to moderates or progressives who are frustrated with the status quo. But it's important to be clear that his party's platform, the Democratic Socialists of America platform, is not simply a list of incremental reforms. It is, by any reasonable definition, openly radical in many respects. It calls for abolishing the Senate and the Electoral College, replacing capitalism with democratic socialism, fully defunding the police, and closing prisons, and a host of other sweeping systemic changes. So when Carolyn shared that article and said she resonated so much with its content, it naturally raises questions about whether she also supports the broader movement and platform that come with it. I understand that Carolyn prefers to focus on issues rather than get stuck in labels, so tonight, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to cover two main areas. First, I want to revisit some of the topics Assemblyman McClellan raised during his interview, some of the notes that Carolyn was able to prepare for tonight with some of those topics that were brought up, and then discuss that social media post that seemed to praise the article that was written, but maybe some people could speculate some alignment with Mamdani, So, while it's fair to say that one Facebook post doesn't define a candidate, that article and the DSA platform included a broad range of policy positions and calls to action that go well beyond routine Democratic messaging. So we'll look at some of the issues and policy ideas from the Democratic Socialists of America, ask where Carolyn personally stands on them, and clarify whether there is any direct overlap or not between her positions and theirs. Because ultimately, this is why this platform exists. So that instead of relying on speculation or social media debates, voters can hear directly from the candidates themselves and make up their own minds. So, let's get into it. How you doing, Carolyn?
I'm doing quite well, and I look forward to addressing the issues that you raised.
Cool. So, why don't we start? I think maybe you want to get a little closer to the microphone. I think from my perspective, some of the things that McClellan brought up would be more directly relevant to the position you're seeking, obviously, because he's the incumbent. And so why don't we get into one of the things that is on his campaign site and that we talked about. So on the website, it says that the Governor Murphy administration is participating in executive overreach. And when I asked him to clarify, he said there's too many taxes and spending priorities, and there's a lot of talk about the current budget that went through. Do you want to address either those specific components or maybe the general comment about the current administration participating in overreach?
There is actually one area where I do feel that there has been some government overreach, and that would be in the what they call real resilience. Environmentally, I forget what REAL stands for, but it's the...
is that an acronym?
It's an acronym.
Okay, like REAL stands for something.
REAL, and it has to do with the environment and dealing with the expected changes in our environment and the zoning that will have to be put into place in New Jersey to keep everybody above the flood levels.
Okay. I just talked about that with a couple of different people over the weekend, and it seems to be a common theme.
It was done by executive order. It has not yet been put into place. In fact, it was supposed to take effect in August. There were hearings about it. Mm-hmm. It was put out, the DEP put it together, and Governor Murphy issued it as an executive order. It was supposed to go into place starting in August, which would be next month, but there was just a revision made to it, so they're going to reopen public hearings, and it has been pushed off till, I believe, the end of the year or early January. So that's a good thing, but my position on it is that it should not be done by executive order. This is something that the legislative branch should be writing a law that would then have to pass. It would have to be debated in the Assembly and the Senate. It would have to pass, and then the governor could sign it. It's not something that the governor should mandate, in my opinion. So I believe that it should have been introduced as legislation and taken that route. I'm not exactly sure how that happens, but I do believe that somebody in the legislature should have put forth a bill that would have addressed these issues and taken it out of the governor's hands.
Okay.
And I think maybe there's still time to do that.
Sure. Not to cut you off, but could you help explain what the actual issue is for people who are not following along as closely as we are?
So the issue has to do with the fact that there was an environmental study done, and based on the statistics of sea level rise over the most recent number of years, they put together a plan of what they think it will be by the end of the century.
The rising sea level, where they think that will be.
Yes,
okay.
And then they put together new zoning recommendations, I guess they would be zoning laws if it's adopted, that show how high any new construction has to be built, very high.
Right.
If you're in a coastal area, and a good bit inland even, so that in the event of flooding, you would be above the floodplain. but it is going to cost a lot to like retrofit any buildings that have to be retrofitted,
right, and
to build houses as high as what they're talking about. And the concern that a lot of people have is that it looks at what a worst case scenario will be by the end of the century and plans for that now. So it's a bit of overkill at this point. I think Antoine said that he thought it had to do with planning for a 100-year storm that may or may not ever happen.
Well, like once in a century
storm, and they're forcing everybody to address something that may or may not happen.
Right.
That is a problem. I don't think that that's the right way to move forward. But that's not even what they're talking about. They're talking about the amount of effort that we've put in as a state and as a country and a planet to curbing the effects of climate change has been so negligible that we can expect the sea level to continue rising. So it's meant to make us safe through the end of the century, not necessarily for
a one-time storm.
Right. It's meant to address the fact that the sea level, because we're not doing anything to change it, it will continue to rise, and making sure that people who build houses now are building them in a way that they will be sustainable, and they will be okay going into the future. And it has to do with also raising roads. You know, like if the flood level or the sea level rises, then your roads have to rise.
Especially with the storms that have been happening over the past couple weeks.
Yeah, you look at Texas. Well, yes, they've been hitting us hard as well, but there are storms across the country are happening more frequently and with more severity than ever before. And this is an effort by the state of New Jersey to address that proactively.
Right.
Whether it was done the right way through an executive order, I don't think so.
Right.
So I would be fine with the legislature putting together a proposal and then, going through the legislative process. So I think that is the biggest problem with NJ Real. I think it's necessary. I don't think that you can continue building the way that we've been building and expect these structures to last.
Right. So you're not opposed to the general idea. You just think the process should have been
The process should have been different, and I think it is somewhat excessive. It should be looked at in increments, not like the next 75 years, because that's what we're talking about. Whatever they think it's going to be in 75
super
years,
expensive.
They're planning to require builders to meet what will exist in 75 years. They could make it 10 years.
Right.
And then 10 years from then, it would be 10 years out, because some of these houses aren't going to last that long anyway. So there are studies that should be done, and there are more logical and rational ways to approach it, in my opinion. So I think that the concept is good. I would also love to see us do something about climate change. So if we did that, then maybe we could say there is no need to plan for a worst case, scenario from 75 years from now, because we're not going to let it get that bad.
Sure.
But we as a people haven't made the commitment to do that.
I guess the common debate point there is, can we actually get a bunch of people to make those kinds of changes? And even if we do, what would be the short-term effect? Because obviously you can do a lot of things in the long term, but if we're trying to mitigate things that are happening now, that gets you require a lot of pressure and influence to get people to cooperate.
Yeah, I think it's a two-pronged approach. You have to address the eventuality of sea level rise, but you also have to address what's causing it and try to make it slow down.
Right.
So that you mitigate and cause sea level rise to happen less aggressively. So I think you have to be doing both.
Was there another example of executive overreach, or should we move on to the next thing?
I guess one of the comments that was made previously was about in order to pay for the items that were in the budget, taxes were increased. They were increased on cigarettes, alcohol, and gambling. Yeah, I'm okay with that. These are things that people could do without if they have a problem with the higher prices. Yeah. So I'd rather see if they have to increase the prices on something, I'd rather it be that than on our groceries or on, I mean, I don't use gas because I have an electric vehicle, but most people would like to see their gas prices not go up in the state of New Jersey.
Right.
So I think you do have to, people have to realize that in order to pay for the services that we receive and that we all like, that there has to be taxes. And to raise them on some of these items, to me, seems appropriate.
I wonder, because a lot of times when I'm doing this type of thing, I come across the topic of how little some of our public representatives actually get paid. Like our local school board works for free.
Yeah.
Or the Millville City Commissioners get paid something like $9,000 an hour. I mean, a year.
School superintendents get paid a whole lot, though.
Right. But so then, I raise the point sometimes that maybe we should be paying these people a little bit more. That way, when we have these issues that need to be better coordinated or need more time to address and all that kind of stuff, they don't have to work a day job, or maybe they only work part-time, or everybody, as in,
okay.
If we're going to show up to school board meetings and get into really long arguments about how things should go, then maybe we should be paying our school board representatives at least something for the work that they do. And that would require raising taxes.
Exactly. It's all a balancing game. So
yeah,
I agree with you that people might be more inclined to put more effort into something if they were being compensated for it, but you have some positions that are volunteer and will probably stay that way. So
yeah. Let's see. Okay. So then, a lot of the line of questions that I was giving Antoine was just from the perspective of, like, I remember a couple years ago when I first looked over the CCRRO website, the local Republican website, the language on the campaign site was a little vague. And so I came across this other topic of broken promises from the Trenton Democrats. And I think we were mentioning before we got on the air that one of those potential broken promises was Route 55 not being completed. Do you have a take on that?
I would love to see 55 go all the way to the shore.
Right.
I drive it all the time, and it is very frustrating when you get dumped onto a one-lane road that is a slower limit and no opportunity to pass because there's tons of curves. I would love to see 55 go all the way to the shore. I think you can refer to it as a broken promise, but I did go back and look at legislation that was proposed over the past 6 years by our two current assemblymen, and there was nothing in it about Route 55. So it concerns me that it has not become a priority for either of them. What I would like to see happen is an impact study, because I do know that a lot of the area, if you were to continue 55 to the shore, there are areas of wetland, there are areas that are environmentally protected, so you would have to have a very good impact study and an engineering study and come up with a very good plan to move forward. So I think the first thing would be pushing for legislation that would fund that kind of a study. And then you could honestly come back to the taxpayers and, let them know what the cost of such an effort would be. But it is something that I would love to see happen. It's not something that I would ever promise to anyone. I would not be foolish enough to do that, because there are so many issues that come into play with that. So I would definitely like to propose legislation that would fund an impact study and an environmental planning effort.
Right. Yeah, it does sound like an important issue, because it's something even before I started paying attention to politics at this level, I heard people making the comment about wanting that project to be completed, and the way Antoine was describing it, it's a safety issue. It's an evacuation route, and so
that is also very true.
Yeah, and so I would assume you both agree that it needs to get done. And so hopefully sometime within the near future it gets re-raised.
I think we would agree that it needs to get done, but I disagree that it's a broken promise on the part of Democrats. If you look at the record of Republicans who have not proposed any legislation that would effectuate that.
Right, I got you.
That happening.
Was there anything else on that general topic, or should we go on to maybe one more before we switch the whole tone around?
Yeah, we can go into one more. What do you have on there?
So just to continue that theme of looking over a campaign site and not knowing exactly what the meaning behind the wording is, he said that there was an increasingly radical agenda going on in Trenton.
Yes.
And from the Democrats. Do you have any general take on whether that means the high taxes or the regulations or maybe some of the specific policies that go on?
Well, when I listened to your conversation with Representative McClellan, or Assemblyman McClellan, he did talk about taxes, and I do agree that we are a very high tax state, and I would love to see taxes in New Jersey go down. I do have some ideas about how we might be able to make that happen. I think we do need to consolidate school systems and even possibly municipalities if we have the courage to move forward with stuff like that. I think that form of consolidation, bringing some of the school districts together, would ease the burden on school funding, and that's where a lot of your taxes go anyway. So I think there are ways that we can improve our tax situation. I don't think that it's a radical situation that we have. We're paying for what we get. And I think that we live in one of the best states in the country. So we get the services that we need. I would like to see the taxes come down because I think that they are very high for a lot of people, and it is doable. We just need to put the effort in to make that happen. As far as overregulation, I have a problem with that one because I think most of the regulation that's in place, and I would be willing to look, issue by issue, but in general, the regulation is in place to protect the environment, to protect safety, to protect human life, and I applaud that. I like the fact that we regulate emissions from factories and the way certain things are done to keep our water clean and our air clean. So for the most part, I think that regulation is a good thing. I think not so much in the state of New Jersey, but elsewhere, I'm finding that Republicans are working more and more to regulate the human body. We have laws that protect women here in the state of New Jersey, and I don't ever want to see that change. I don't want the government to regulate what women can do with their bodies. I also believe that if a child has identified as having gender dysphoria and has worked with their parents and their doctor and has decided that gender affirming care is appropriate for them, that the government shouldn't be regulating that either. I have a problem with the government stepping into decisions that should be between citizens and doctors. So there are a couple of areas where I believe that Republicans are the ones that are over-regulating. But as far as the regulations that we have in the state on other aspects, I think for the most part, they're to protect us. And if somebody wanted to share with me a regulation that has no real purpose, I'd be game for
getting rid of it. Yeah.
Getting rid of it. Yeah,
sure.
I would absolutely move forward with that. So I don't think anything needs to be overregulated, but I think we need to have clean air, clean water. Our food supply needs to be good. So there are a lot of things that I believe need regulation, and I would not want to see it deregulated.
Right, I gotcha. I generally agree with the whole let companies do what they do until they're like intentionally poisoning the environment, right?
Right.
There's
And
got to
yeah.
be some type of cap somewhere.
Yeah, you're dealing with PFAS now. Like they're finding it in our brains. That's got to be bad. I don't want PFAS in my brain.
You don't want plastic in your brain?
No, I was thinking that would be a bad thing.
You don't want to transition into humanoid?
No,
or plastic human?
Not this week. So.
So let's go on to that Zoran Mamdani article, post, or whatever.
Happy to do that.
Cool. So the main thing that comes up with me when I see Zoran running is he is a Democratic Socialist. And so when I read their platform, a lot of that is like fundamentally rooted in, I guess what you could say, radical change. And so I want to give you a chance to like maybe clarify like what you meant by the post, and because it's very easy to get lost in the text and the back and forth on social media debates or whatever you call it.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
As I mentioned to you before, I am not one who believes in labels. I will say that I am not a Democratic Socialist.
Okay.
I believe strongly in capitalism.
Okay.
But I have, in fact, when I ran for Congress previously, my website had something on there where I identified myself as a guardrail capitalist.
Oh, okay.
I
What's that?
have to put that back on my website now. I will do that. I'm working on updating my website with some more information that's specific to me. The one that I had previously was for the two of us because I was running with a running mate during the primary. I'm in the process of updating it, so it reflects more just my issues and takes a deeper dive into them. But a guardrail capitalist is somebody, I believe that people, that you should be rewarded for hard work. And that's basically at its core, that's what capitalism does.
Right.
You work hard, you get ahead, but it needs guardrails. So I don't believe that unfettered capitalism works. I think capitalism does, and for a couple of centuries just about, it was working here. But we've gotten to the point where capitalism has gone off the rails, and the rich just keep getting richer at the expense of the poor. Now, none of them would have gotten where they are without the people that are below them. So it's like if you want to take, for example, Amazon.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, he put the money in, he did the marketing, he did all of the technical work to build his company, but he never would have been successful if he didn't have people working for him that made his dream come true.
Sure.
The people that work for him should not be making so little when he is making so much.
Right.
So I think that the guardrails need to be put in there so that it's not at the expense of the little people. I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but I do believe in capitalism. I just don't believe in unchecked. Like I think
you're basically, I think, saying something along the lines, and I was just thinking about the environmental protections thing. It's like, it's one thing to let companies build their products, but if they're literally poisoning the environment, then it goes
That's
too
not
far.
okay.
You're kind of making a similar argument, at least correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
that it's okay for companies to build their products and build their companies, but if it gets to a point where people aren't even making a living wage, then you're just exploiting labor
Yes.
as opposed to having a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yes. And I'm not sure exactly how to fix that. What I would like to explore are things like the ratio of the CEO to the lowest wage earner. It should never be beyond a certain percentage.
Right, I
I
know
mean,
what you
right
mean.
now, if you look at what, the owner, take all of your billionaires, take Zuckerberg, Bezos, Musk, Cook, all of them, and compare their salary to the people that
Right.
make them rich, the delta should not be, or the ratio should not be so out of whack.
Right.
Because those people are bringing value to him. And that's where unions come in, but unions are not generally in these types of industries. So, I mean, they can fight union. I know Amazon has fought unions. Like, they don't want people to unionize because then they lose some of the power that they have over the employees, but they need to treat their employees better.
Sure.
And I'm not exactly sure. I don't think it would make me a socialist to say that I believe that some of the wealth that's generated for a company needs to be spread back to the employees who make that money for the company.
And I think it's important to have these kinds of conversations because if I just looked briefly at your social media post, I might make some unfair associations.
Well, let me explain what I liked about Mondani.
Sure.
What I really liked is that he was anti-establishment. So when I say I like the campaign that he ran a very anti-establishment campaign.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I actually pulled up that post because you were talking about it, and I have it. Let's see.
Because in my mind, while you're looking it up, sometimes when I hear that anti-establishment thing, I get sometimes you need to stand up for what you believe in, even though the people above you are telling you something different. But then I've heard a couple of arguments recently where sometimes that's perceived as like not being a team player, as in if you join an establishment or a company or whatever, and you're there for a year, who are you to tell the boss things need to be different? You know what I mean?
But I believe that every politician needs to be running in a way that works for the constituents more than it works for the party that they represent. I think that the constituents have to be your higher priority than the party. And I think both parties right now have such low ratings, and it's because, to a large extent, they're not connecting with the people. I think, especially Democrats right now, are not connecting with people. And he did. He went out and he talked to people. He spent his whole primary campaign out talking to people. And that's what I want to do.
Right.
I want to meet people where they are and understand the issues that are important to them. And then those are the issues that I want to be talking about. So he was everywhere talking to everyone. He wasn't just going to fundraisers. He wasn't just trying to recruit millionaires to fundraise for him. He was dealing with the people.
He was showing up to the meet and greets.
He absolutely was. And one of the things that he talked about most on his campaign was affordability.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what we need to be talking about to all the people?
Pretty much.
Those are the things about his campaign that I really like.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he was not doing what the establishment thought he should be doing, but what he thought he should be doing.
Sure.
That's how I will run.
I guess then the next part of my logic then goes, are you not then just running as an independent?
You can't win as an independent.
Yeah.
So I'm not running it as an independent.
Right.
There are times where I wish that I could. But independents can't win races.
Right.
I mean, we have a few that have, and believe me, I've reached out to them. I reached out to Bernie Sanders and Angus King and asked, how did you guys do this?
Right.
I didn't get any responses.
Yeah.
I am, at my core, my values align more with the Democratic Party than anything else.
Right.
So I am a Democrat. So
you're kind of just hoping that from within the party you can establish enough influence to get that ball rolling, get the establishment to go in a different direction.
Once I get into the assembly?
Sure. Yeah.
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 I think one of the skills that I have developed over my 35 years as a professional engineer and a manager is that I have a way of explaining things to people that help them to better understand the issues. I break it down in terms, I can read my audience and I can work with my audience and I can get them to see the logic behind the path that I think they should be taking. I can be very persuasive. So I think in the assembly, I would be able to bring people along. And I think you referred to me at one point as a democratic pragmatist.
Yeah.
That is what I am. That if I had to give myself a label, which I hate labels, but I am very pragmatic. If my idea is to go like totally extreme, but I know we can never get there, I'm willing to back off.
Right.
I will always back
It's
off
too big
to
of an
where,
ask.
if it is too big of an ask, I'm willing to let go of part of it, as long as we can get something through.
Compromise to make us
Absolutely,
step forward.
that's what has to happen. I'm never
Especially in politics.
the type of a human that it's like my way or the highway, or like we see with President Trump, it's a win-lose thing. No, there can't be a win-win. Like one person wins and one person loses. I don't go that way. I like win-wins.
Well, it kind of reminds me of, did you ever read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
I should, but I did not.
Well, in one of the opening paragraphs, he brings out the concept that when you make a compromise, neither party is happy, as opposed to fighting for what you believe in, and then...
I think that's better, though, because neither party is devastated either.
It's true.
Each party, I mean,
It's true.
it's the glass half full or half empty.
Yeah.
Each party got something that they wanted.
Yeah.
If you don't compromise, nobody gets any of what they want.
Right.
So I'd rather see that. I'll push as hard as I can to get as much as I can. But if I like I said, I can read the room. If I know it's not going somewhere, I will compromise. I will, I'll get something out of every situation.
Figure out a way to at least make a step forward,
Yes.
as opposed to getting absolutely everything that you want.
Right. And that's the best way to work with other people, because then the next time an issue comes up, they'll be willing to compromise with you.
Right.
You build goodwill.
Right.
And I think that's what we're missing. We need to have more of that.
Yeah, there is a lot of selfishness going around in this culture right now. And it extends way beyond politics.
Yeah, at this point, it's in every aspect of our society, sadly.
So then, just to double check, are you in favor of abolishing the Senate and the Electoral College?
No, but I know that there are better ways to have the Electoral College.
Okay, maybe you can
Abolishing
explain
the
that.
Senate, I don't even understand that.
That's
what
that's
Mondami
literally
wants?
the
'Cause
first paragraph of the DSA platform.
I guess I haven't read the DSA platform
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's not where I am, and
And also, just to help give you more context of why I think this is important, is there is a local chapter forming of the DSA in Cumberland County. Now, obviously, they're small, and I don't know how many people are actually paying attention to them, but they are growing, and I do have several friends who do think like that. And so I think it's important when we have these kinds of conversations for you to clarify, either for me or my friends or whoever is going to go out and vote, is it fair to even associate you with this group at all? You know what I mean?
I would say, if we're talking labels, I am not a Democratic Socialist,
Right.
but I may agree with some of the things that they agree
Sure,
with.
and that's
but
why I double checked.
I don't even understand the part about abolishing the Senate. But I will tell you that the Electoral College has a problem. There is something called the National Electoral College. There's something afoot that requires only a few more states to sign on, where it will effectively abolish the Electoral College. I wish I knew you were going to bring this up, because I would have looked it up.
No, there's just so many topics that
there
we could
is
talk
something that if enough states agree, what do you need to win? 237?
about. Yeah, something like that.
If you need 237 to win, if enough states sign up to agree to this, so that you have states that collectively have 237 electoral votes.
I did hear about this. Yeah, go ahead.
If you have enough states that agree to do this, and together they hold 237 or more electoral, what do they call it? Electors?
Votes. Yeah, and the electors themselves.
Yeah, then they all collectively agree that whoever wins the popular vote, they will give their electors to that candidate.
Right.
So effectively, it becomes the popular vote. The popular vote becomes the Electoral College outcome.
Right.
But it's based on those, and it might be like 20 states have to come together to form the 237, that magic number.
Right.
And if all of those states say, whoever wins the popular vote, I will give my votes to that person, even if in my state they didn't win.
Right.
If in my state, you got candidate A and B, if in my state B got more votes, but in all those other states A got the votes,
Right.
I'll give my electors to A, so that the popular vote and the Electoral College will always be the same.
Right.
That's what I think needs to happen. Abolishing the Electoral College would take a constitutional amendment, because that's in the Constitution.
Right.
And I don't think that that's worth it, because I think we can get around it.
Then wouldn't it be fair to say that it's effectively the same thing?
It is. It is.
Okay.
But you don't abolish the Electoral College.
Okay.
You just make it so that...
but why not? Because it would go against the Constitution?
You can't do it without an amendment to the Constitution.
Right.
Because it's defined in the Constitution. The Electoral College is defined in the Constitution.
Yeah.
So, and there were reasons for it back when the Constitution was written. They no longer exist.
Oh.
The reasons for having had it back then don't exist now. So, abolishing it, maybe that's a good idea. I don't know. But why bother? You can get around it.
You can do this workaround.
Yes, you can do this workaround, and they're so close to it. I think they need like 1 or 2 more states, and it would be done.
Would it be brief to explain what the prior reasons for the Electoral College were that don't apply anymore?
It had something to do with slavery, I think.
Oh.
I know I knew it at one point, but the 3/5 of a person rule and all that, I think it had something to do with it. Now,
Okay.
I may be wrong, and if there's callers that want to call in and correct that, no, don't do it. Okay,
misinformation.
Yeah, I don't mean to be spreading any misinformation, so I'll put that disclaimer out. I may be wrong, but it had something to do with a situation, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, that doesn't exist now. And I would not have a problem if we didn't have the Electoral College, but it's not worth going through the efforts of getting rid of it.
Right.
If we're gonna have a constitutional amendment for anything, it needs to overturn Citizens United, so that we can get big money out of politics.
That's a whole other topic.
That's to me, in government, that's one of the most important topics, because every politician now is spending all of their time getting money to run their campaigns, and very little time legislating.
Right.
And that's horrible.
And that goes back to my idea about paying our school board candidates and local officials a full-time salary so that they can just do the job.
Okay, so you're going to just keep raising taxes? What are you, a socialist?
I guess I am. I don't know. In certain aspects.
Yes. Well, and you always have to look at it, because there are certain aspects where you do have to take care of people who have nothing. It's not okay to let people just,
die in the street.
Exactly. So we do have a responsibility to be social in certain aspects of life. But the things I liked about Mamdani is his anti-establishment approach, his going directly to the people, his talking about affordability at every turn. These are all things that...
So you weren't necessarily resonating with, having people join his campaign directly?
No. No, in fact...
Because that was, the last part of that article.
I have felt like... I think Democrats are twisting themselves in pretzels to condemn him for certain things that he has said, and I think that's unfair, and I think that's just part of the way our social media, misinformation, all that stuff goes these days. He has said things, and people take his word. I've heard him in interviews where he explains what he meant when he said something, but if you don't hear the context of the interview and you just hear the clip where somebody says, and it has a lot to do with anti-Semitism. That's why I posted again yesterday saying, please talk to this Arab Jew that wants to help you.
Right.
Did you see that? The actor?
I did see that.
Ariel Sancho? Or
I forget what his name was.
Sancho or something like that. He's a Broadway actor who wants to help Mamdani figure out how to interact with the Jewish community. Because I don't think Mamdani wishes them any ill, but I think a lot of them think that he does. And I wish that they would come together and talk about it.
There's a lot of, I guess, reasonable amount of fear going around, because everything is so heated and intensified right now.
There is a lot of anti-Semitism out there.
I agree.
I don't think he's part of it. I don't.
Well, but here's my angle on a lot of that, and is reflective of this conversation right now. It's whatever it is he meant, or whatever it is that's actually going on, we need to have more conversations like this.
Yes.
So that we don't run around speculating unfairly on each other or watching poorly clipped videos that make people look worse than they actually are and all that kind of stuff. And then hopefully get past all the BS conversations and actually get to work and solve problems.
Right. But the full interviews, they don't sell like the little clips that, like, you know, make somebody look horrible. So
I'm still trying to figure that out because, you know, like that initial interview we did, nobody's going to watch 2.5 hours.
No.
But it's good that we had the conversation, and then I can later help distill it into digestible points that maybe go on my website, and then set up the foundation for these follow-up conversations. And similarly, I'm not expecting anybody to listen to this full 1 hour conversation, but it does help move the conversation forward. And then later, you know, maybe in October, it gets even more digestible.
Right.
So that somebody might actually look at my website for an hour and make a more informed choice.
What were some of the other things that you said that Democratic Socialists, they want to defund ICE or police?
They want 0 deportations overall.
See, I disagree with that. I think that deportations are okay if you're getting rid of violent criminals.
Or people who have just not gone through the process properly at all.
But that's not what's happening now. But I agree. People that came and, you know, I think that you have to get rid of the criminals first. And then after that, you have to look at whether or not the people that are still here are contributing to our economy and our society.
All that kind of stuff.
And take all of that into consideration, because what's happening now is crazy. But I would never say like 0 deportations, because if people come in that don't belong here, and by that I mean that are here and likely to do harm rather than good,
right.
I'm all for deporting them.
Right. And that's, again, important why we have these conversations, because I went to the Democratic Socialists of America meeting here, and the guy openly said, we want 0 deportations. And
so he would be okay if known criminals came in and just stayed.
I guess, but I guess that would also be another follow-up conversation with him. Like, are you sure that's what you meant?
Yeah,
because
I doubt that that's what they mean, but it sounds very extreme.
Yeah,
that's not my position.
And then I guess since we're on that topic and that I'm thinking about that meeting, they were openly advocating for setting up rapid response teams to ICE raids to intentionally agitate.
Intentionally agitate is not what I would want to do, but I would be happy to accompany people to ICE. If people have an ICE check-in, what's happening too often is that they're here, they've come to the country, they've asked for asylum, they have a process that they've been going through. They have to check in every 6 months or whatever the case may be. When they go to the court to check in, the judges are somehow dismissing their cases, and then as soon as they walk out of the courtroom, they're getting arrested.
Right.
So I would be happy to go with people who are trying to go through the process legally and in accordance with what they've done. Some of them for the past, 4 years or whatever. They've been going every 6 months to their check-ins and doing everything that they need to do, paying their taxes, everything that's expected of them, and then they get snagged by ICE afterwards. So I wouldn't go to agitate, but I would go to protect innocent immigrants that are doing things the right way.
Right. It's the distinction.
Like if they go into a courtroom and there's no interpreter and they need one,
right,
I would stand up for them and say, you need to get this rescheduled because you don't have what this person needs.
Right.
So I would advocate for
the actual due process.
Yes.
Is what you're talking about.
Thank you for helping me with my words.
Oh no, you explained it in detail, but
yes.
I'm just using my active listening skills.
Yes, very good, very good. So yes, I would help
as
immigrants
opposed to showing up somewhere where you don't know what's going on and just getting into
I wouldn't go
agitate,
especially with the guns and stuff that they're carrying. I'm not going to agitate any of them. But if I have an immigrant that I know is on the right track, I would be happy to help them get due process.
Right. Cool. And again, that's why I think it's important to have these clarification talks, because I do know people who say things like, and they live in my community, and that's what they're talking about.
Now, see, there are cases where things have happened with other politicians where one side of the aisle will say they were just agitating, but then the other side of the aisle will say, no, they weren't. They were doing their job as, like up in Trenton.
Right.
Yeah, Trenton, where they were going to that Delaney facility, and the not state representatives, but the House representatives, there were 3 of them that wanted to go in and check it out, and they have every right to do so, but why they weren't allowed in, like they weren't there to agitate, but some people will say that's what they were doing there.
See,
they were there because they have an obligation to go make sure everything inside that holding facility
Here's where my
legit.
mind goes with that, where I wonder how many people in the crowd were escalating and yelling.
Yeah, the
and
people
all that
in the crowd
kind of
might
stuff.
have been doing that.
And then that escalates the tension on the...
Yeah, then you end up, arresting mayors and
Right.
Congress people.
And that's why I don't think it's a good idea to go and intentionally agitate.
No, but I think there are a lot of people that are not intentionally agitating, but they're getting lumped in with the rest of the crowd.
Right, because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time
Right.
type stuff. Yeah.
I
can
do
see
believe
that.
people have every right to protest, though.
Oh, sure. As long as they're not being overly aggressive, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So we touched on a lot of that. And I guess just to clarify, it means you're not necessarily trying to advocate for having public ownership of the means of production and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean?
No, public.
Okay, so this is like the direct language of socialism and communism.
What?
Yeah.
Say it again.
Owning the means of production, having the workforce as opposed to the owners of the...
Oh, no, I still believe in capitalism.
Right.
So I think that, like I said, I'm a guardrail capitalist, and I'll put that out on my website so people can better understand what I'm talking about. I believe that people need to work hard and that their hard work should be rewarded. Mm-hmm. I just don't believe in the extremes that we've gone to in this country, and it's a fairly recent anomaly.
Oh, sure. I got you. And then, we only got a couple more minutes.
Really?
Yeah, we flew through this.
Wow.
Was there anything left that you kind of wanted to talk about that
Well, I was thinking, when you talk to Antoine, one of the things that I really thought was cool that he said he goes to schools and talks to children about civics. I think that's wonderful. And if I am an elected official, I would love to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I hope he has set a good foundation for that to continue, regardless of who's in office.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off that, when he and I discussed the things that I usually advocate for, the reintroduction of civics in school,
Absolutely
the county
necessary.
Provided candidate information, and rebuilding the local press, he seems to be on, maybe not on every particular of it, but generally speaking, he seems to be on board with all that stuff.
Rebuilding the press, I like the idea, but I don't know who would pay for it, because the press has always made their money on circulation and advertising, and it's not happening anymore because people just get their press on their phone. They get their news on their phone. So I don't know who would pay for it. So I like the idea, but I think you would have to raise taxes to make it happen.
I think what you might have to do is present it as a verified source and consolidated source. Because one of the problems that I run into is there may be information out there, but you don't know if you can trust it, and it's all over the place.
Right.
That was the initial idea behind my website.
Yeah.
It's just, the information must exist. Let's just put it all in one place.
I will give to the League of Women Voters. They do a lot of work to get candidates to provide them information, and they've got what's called Vote 411. You should be able to go to that site and get information about every candidate. Mm-hmm. Now, it's only going to be as good as the information the candidates provide to them. So I have provided information to them each time I've run, but I usually go out to their site and my opponents don't have information out there. So you can't do a compare and contrast, but I always try to make sure that you can find out information about me.
Right.
They have formatted questions, and we provide answers to those questions. And they're generally the things people want to know about.
Right. And that's basically what I was trying to do when I started. But now it's mutated into a podcast and a radio show.
No, it's all good though.
Anyway, we've only got a little bit of time left, so thank you very much for taking time out of your day.
It's been my pleasure.
I know you're very busy, and all the candidates are busy with their campaigns and all that kind of stuff. So again, this is Carolyn Rush. She's running for General Assembly in LD1. A lot of her information is already on my website, but it will obviously be developing as the campaign season goes on. My name's Steve Solof. This is InformTheVoteNJ Radio Hour at Cruising 92.1 WVLT in Vineland, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening.
Want to know the secret to what makes Rita's Water Ice so delicious? Did you know that Rita makes their ice fresh every day with real fruit at each store? It's that combo of real fruit and real fresh that makes Rita's Italian ice so one of a kind. There's really no place like Rita's. 73 Landis Avenue, Bridgeton.